If everybody could get their food and get seated, we will begin. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the holiday edition of Transit Riders Council, or should I say the frigid edition of Transit Riders Council? It's really cold out there. Can we have approval of today's agenda? Thank you. Thank you. Any discussion of the minutes? Any corrections, additions? Christopher D. Greif.
Just want to wish everyone. I just want to say the minutes were really good, and I have to say the video screen, the way we had the speaker last month, it was really interested and really was the way it was really done. But I do also want to wish everyone a happy, healthy holidays. And there's some Hershey Kisses next to where Trudy Mason is. I said next to. Well, you said it.
Oh, these are
Thank you,
good.
Chris.
Thank you.
These are delicious.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion with the happy holiday to approve.
Second? Great.
All in favor?
Oh, I think it's unanimous. So, okay, let me go into the combined chair and board report because it's quite something this month. Needless to say, anyone saw the news yesterday knows it was quite something. But yesterday's full board meeting did culminate in passage of the budget. There was a lot of discussion of what's sort of unspoken and not accounted for in the budget. Some of the city representatives brought that up, particularly Bob Lynn. There are certain things that will result in additional expenses that he did not believe were reflected in the budget. Overtime for the new police officers.
Supervision.
Yeah, will there actually be supervisors, or will those 500 new officers be under somebody else? And if there were supervisors, that would mean fewer than 500. So that was not spelled out. There were a whole host of items that he raised, some capital items that might end up some expenses that were not reflected in the budget. So there was quite a long discussion about that, and quite a vociferous and angry public session, at one point, which the board was charged by a couple of people, and they had to be removed forcibly.
Adrian saved him?
Adrian was amazing. You know, the Adrian, the guy who does our audio, he was amazing. What reflexes? Just amazing. So
I like to say that he saved the touchdown.
yeah, and I mean, that doesn't really help anyone's point to do that, but everybody was heard. It was a fairly lengthy public session. There was some real angst at hiring additional cops. I actually spoke in favor of the additional police because I think they will protect everyone. Fare evasion is an all-time high, but they are not only for fare evasion. There are increasing attacks on transit employees. You may recall about a week and a half ago, a train operator pulled a train into a station, opened their window to look out on the platform, which is what they are supposed to do, and were summarily smashed in the face by someone on the platform. So there are a whole host of issues that these additional police will hopefully do. There are lots of quality of life issues. It is virtually impossible to ride a train now without being harangued by either a musician or a beggar for money. It's almost impossible. And every time I use a station now, I see the fare evasion. I've even seen people wait for 2 and 3 trains until somebody exits through the slam gate, and then they will go in. I am going to propose a study of that a little bit later, and we'll talk about conditions that we might look at in conjunction with fare evasion. But let me move on. There was, unfortunately, no discussion of the outer borough transportation fund, and what has been proposed by, among others, Assemblymember Jeff Dinowitz of the Bronx, which will remove the toll on the Henry Hudson for Bronx residents, and also this will take away the toll on the Cross Bay Bridge for Queens residents. You may recall we had worked out a deal because so many of the Broad Channel residents' needs were on the Rockaway Peninsula, schools, hospitals, stores, that after paying the fare once, you had unlimited travel for the rest of that calendar day. Anyway, that's being done away with.
Bradley did testify in opposition.
Yes, Bradley did a great
There was
job.
a lot of there was a lot of concern raised by departed now board member Veronica Vanderpool about using out-of-borough transit funds for toll relief. So that was a concern that Bradley testified
Yes,
well on.
at a time when we hope congestion pricing, when it begins in January of 2021, will dissuade some people from driving. Here we are making it more attractive to drive by doing away with these tolls. There's something wrong with that picture. The out-of-borough transportation fund could have been used to beef up service for certain parts of those geographic areas, but it was not. At least this portion of it will not be. And
Andrew, point
yeah,
of information.
sure.
Did I read correctly that they're going to turn the Verrazano into a two-way toll?
People have discussed that for a really long time.
There's something in the paper this morning that said it's been
That's a
approved.
congressional action. That's actually takes an act of Congress to change the Verrazano tolls.
Yeah.
So I think that I know that
Lots
something
of good
was under
reasons to
discussion.
do that, not the least of which is it will amazingly reduce traffic on Canal Street because so many folks are going the Free Bridge route and via New Jersey to avoid the Verrazano toll. So hopefully that will happen, Bert. I'm not holding my breath. Oh, I will have to see. I didn't get a chance to read the clips this morning, but ridership trends are really amazingly good. Transit ridership is up. Even bus ridership is up, but subway ridership is appreciably up, which is a tribute to Andy and his team for the on-time, increasingly up to almost 84% on-time performance due to the Save Safe Seconds plan, which reduces dwell time in stations. Add that saved dwell time to a 40-station line, and you can see how much more time has been made up. Trains then will leave their terminus on a more on-time schedule, and people are noticing this. People have actually come up to me who know I'm involved in all this and say, my subway ride's been better lately. And that's like unsolicited, so that's a good sign. Trudy.
As I came up to you this morning when I got here late to say that my subway ride was worse than usual. And this is a question, and maybe we can just find out. I had just missed a number 6, literally was pulling out, and I thought that the head wait is usually 3 or 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. And on the time, what is that thing called? The clock. It said next train 9 minutes. No explanation.
There was obviously an issue, Trudy.
But usually there's supposed to be something that says delay, or there's an announcement or something. Nothing, nada, just 9 minutes. And then the next train after that, 2 minutes later. It's
Just
9 minutes, 11
just so you
minutes.
know, I'm looking up the
Yeah,
real live schedule, and it's basically every 2 to 3 minutes that they're scheduled.
Well, I'm telling you this
So there was
morning,
obviously
and
an
on the
issue.
countdown clock, it said 9 minutes.
I'm not disputing you, but there was obviously an issue.
There's also
There was the
planned
same thing last night at 7 o'clock when it took 13 minutes.
Yeah, no, there's issues.
Last night, there was a problem with the third rail. When I was on the train, there's also planned work throughout the days, so there may be delaying some
Okay,
trains as they're
no,
getting to the next one.
I understand that there were delays. All I am suggesting, and that was supposed to
That
be,
doesn't
is
consider a
if there are
delay if it's
delays,
planned
they're
work.
supposed to be announcing delay or whatever, and nothing, just like it was the regularly scheduled time for 9
But if
minutes.
it's planned work, it's not considered a delay. It's built into the schedule, so. yeah.
But it wasn't,
this
never mind,
can't have
never
been
mind.
done
If you can find
because
out.
There was a gap of 9 minutes, but then they're coming along regularly, so there was something affecting that one train. But
Yeah, so if we can ask that they continue, they were doing it for a while, and now it's stopped, making announcements when there's a delay. It would be just helpful to know, maybe I want to take the subway, or maybe I want to walk or do something else. Not today,
Understood.
but obviously.
So ridership trends are good, and that's very good. That helps to militate against any future service cuts, of which there are none in the budget. No budget-driven service cuts. The R179s, I've been discussing this because they've been a concern of mine, are coming in. We have there's going to be an extra 18 that Bombardier is throwing in because of the problems and the lateness of the delivery on them. So we're getting 18, quote, free cars, but there are about, the regular order was 300, they're throwing in 18. We have about 289 in-house now, and as Sally showed me, the MDBF is much improved from what it was last month. So I had a feeling that once the kinks were worked out, it was very low. It was in the low 100,000s. It's now up in the twos and climbing, which, every new car fleet usually does start with a few hiccups. But this will now totally remove the R42s. I think they're only on the J at the moment. No, you see R42s elsewhere?
A and C.
No, absolutely not. Sorry, Chris.
42?
No, those are 32s.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The 42s will be gone by the end of the year, and the 32s should be all. They may keep some for spares in case of issues with other fleets, but should be retired from regular service by next spring. We have been throwing, and people know them, they jerk start, they jerk stop, doors get stuck, they're awful. They're noisy too, and hopefully those will be totally retired by next spring, and the 179s will have replaced them, which have the electronic signs, much smoother acceleration and deceleration, and that's really good news. Yes, Sharon. Oh, I thought your hand was raised. Okay. So that's good news. Please, go ahead.
One that I've been tracking because it's something we've all been interested in, which is crowding. And with the Save Seconds program and speeding up the trains, the number of trains being put through is increasing dramatically. So that they've actually been able to expand the capacity of the system over the last year.
Yeah, throughput is up.
Dramatically.
Absolutely.
Compared to in the past. So that's another thing, is without expansion other ways.
The new metric that they introduced?
Go ahead, Lisa. You can.
I don't remember what it's specifically called. That's why I was hoping somebody else would do it. But there's a new metric that was introduced on Monday. That's time from terminal to terminal, so that it doesn't take. It doesn't look at schedules, which can be changed. It looks at actual time, runtime. Right. So it looks at actual time, which is a terrific advancement for reality check.
I mean, it's good, not that most folks ride from terminal to terminal, but it's a good indication of how the system is operating.
And they did their schedules. So for years, they weren't meeting schedules for like 4 years because their run times were so much longer. And so now they've redone the run times, and they're the right amount, but also to see how much they've been able to reduce them is what this metric, sorry, my brain wasn't functioning. Yeah. So it's a really significant metric they've added in.
Yes, Chris.
I'll put as an example because I know now we know what we're all talking about. I just had a little coffee. But the thing is on Monday when I was heading to South Bay for that press conference, it was a good timing they did this. They had the R train rerouted on the Brighton line and terminated in Brighton Beach. So you had a sign said R train to 71st Forest Hills coming in 3 minutes. So it was like, I said, boy, you guys really need me to get to that conference. And I was like, one train for me. I didn't have to switch, and it was express. So I had to say it was, and they did, and it just to let you know, they did make an announcement. So just letting you guys know.
To continue on, one of the things Lisa mentioned yesterday was Veronica Vanderpool's last day. She's been a real spokesperson for riders and for disabled issues, and
I think I'm gonna have to start writing letters again. You guys can't get me on the list properly.
Why would somebody be forced to wait a half hour? I don't get it. I'm sorry about that, Eric.
But who's on the list?
You're on the list, so I don't know. We have to talk to them, obviously. The regular visitors should not have to go through a third degree. Veronica, as I was saying, has really been terrific. Her voice will be really missed. This leaves the mayor with only 2 members out of 4 because Daniel Zarilli was never approved in Albany. So don't know how soon it will be, but now it's just Bob Lynn and David Jones as the mayor's representatives. And of course, we're not. Go ahead, Lisa. I know what you were going to say.
No,
Go
you
ahead.
don't.
All right,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
There's a strong and growing push for the mayor to appoint somebody with disabilities to the board. And we were just at a press conference a couple minutes ago, a few minutes ago, to be technically correct, that I'll talk about shortly. But there's a real strong coalescence around looking at candidates with a disability. And part of in addition to wanting a diverse board, part of the thinking of the advocacy community that's been engaged in this is that it'll be much more difficult for the governor to hold up that appointment, that it would, that the process would be accelerated because otherwise there's going to be an even larger outcry.
I was afraid if I looked at that chart long enough, I'd find a mistake. There is a mistake. It says Bliss Avenue instead of Bliss Street at 46th Street.
I already said that, Andrew.
Sharon.
Just an adjunct to disabilities is seniors, because many of them have similar issues just because of limited mobility.
And parents with strollers.
Yeah, okay.
So that's some sad news, but we will see who the mayor nominates for the board. Veronica got a job with the Delaware Department of Transportation. She will be their Chief Innovation Officer, so that's good for her. Her significant other lives in Delaware, so that's even a bonus for her, so she'll be moving there. You may have read in the news about, and this wasn't even in a major snowstorm, it was a small snowstorm, which affected the transponders on the number 7. No, not the squall yesterday. The one that affected the transponders on the number 7 line and screwed up that line. I've spoken to both Sally and Andy about that. Andy, of course, is on Thales's case, Thales being the company that installed it. Siemens installed it on the on the L line, which of course is the only other line with CBTC, and which does have some portions that are outside and never had an issue with weather. So clearly, Thales has an issue here, and their feet are being really held to the fire. And now that we're going to have some more weather, and we had some weather, we will get a report on what the issues are. But I don't think yesterday affected the 7, which is something.
Just every other line.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Sharon.
And was that a contract that was done before Andy, so that it's not Andy's fault or any, when people complain about it?
No, and Thales has done other work for us, and we have not had issues like this. It's a world-renowned company, so, but something was really screwed up on this particular installation. We actually had an executive committee meeting this morning, and Randy and Orrin were unable to get there because of issues on the Pascack Valley line. It's not the first. There are countless issues, so much so that the president of Metro-North has told New Jersey Transit that it will be withholding money for their payments for operating their portion of the, most of it is in New Jersey, but there are some New York stations, obviously. Suffering the terminus is in New York State. They're going to withhold money from New Jersey Transit because the 2 express trains that people loved are no longer running. I know there's an operator shortage. We all understand that, but New Jersey Transit has to do a much better job of operating service to New York State. And so Metro-North may likely withhold money from New Jersey Transit until they get their act together. There was a lot of discussion at yesterday's meeting about customers of the e-hail program who love it. Obviously, It's such a great thing, but it is a costly thing. It allows people to plan in real time their travel needs. They don't have to plan long time in advance and wait endlessly outdoors or something. Um, there is, of course, a cap now, starting in January, of 16 trips per month for e-hail customers. The $15 trip is not enough for a lot of folks who said that will put them, on a bridge over the East River or somewhere else that does not work for them. What is happening? And there was a lot of talk about that. Actually, there is even, believe it or not, some talk of having the paratransit portion of New York City Transit a standalone entity. So it would be New York City subways, buses, and paratransit. Don't know when or if that will happen, but that was floated at some point. Andy said he might like to do that. So we will see if that happens, because there's so much attention being focused on it, and is a really important piece of the transportation picture. Edith.
I just wanted to add that City Council held a hearing yesterday.
Yes.
On accessibility and Access-a-Ride.
Yes. The problem, worse than the 16 trips, is the $15.
Yeah.
I mean, I am one of the outliers. I mean, months go by without my taking a trip, but then I take a trip that's $120 each way. I've paid $100 from this building to Washington Heights.
Oh.
I paid $75 from Grand Central to Washington Heights. I will never use Access-a-Ride. And their thing that you can always use traditional Access-a-Ride is so bloody stupid, because it costs the MTA more money if we use traditional.
That issue was brought up many a times.
Twice the cost.
Yep.
I really feel like going to Canarsie on traditional Access-a-Ride just to break their backs. I mean, this is ridiculous. I will totally agree there are people who are violating the spirit and etc. But there are also people who are in total transit deserts. Emas talked about living in Throgs Neck. I don't even go to Throgs Neck from Washington Heights. It's ridiculous. The entire
Yeah,
place.
$15 is clearly an amount that is not realistic and doesn't work for so many folks.
And I also raised the question of how
Actually, I'd like to see a radius.
it's approximately 1.75 miles. It
Ridiculous.
really is. It's like 35 blocks, 30 blocks, whatever,
And then
depending
you've
upon
hit the
traffic.
$15,
I mean, I've gone from 186 to 168 for $17.
It has the added fare from the congestion pricing.
Oh, no, we're not even talking congestion pricing yet. No, we're like.
There's no
puts-
additional fees as
No,
part of
because
that?
congestion pricing exempts
Okay.
Oh, okay.
accessible vehicles.
Okay.
What they have now put on, because all regular taxis now have, the meter goes down and it's like,
No,
before you
nothing
even
to do
move,
with
it's
it.
Before you move, it's $5.80.
Right, right.
No,
Yes.
$6.50.
No. not that
Accessible
high.
vehicles
That was
are
my
exempt.
experience.
Okay. But I would like to say that on curb, 2 days ago, I waited over 30 minutes for a curb, and it was just, I gave up. I got in the car finally, and his thing had gone down, and I was like, just let me out. Just let me out. I'm like, it's ridiculous. But that's, to go from the east side of Manhattan to the west side of Manhattan, only 15 blocks away, is impossible because we have no east-west transfer. The bottom line is this is inequity. It's not comparable service. It's not equitable service. And I'm waiting for the great big lawsuits that's going to come down the pike, because there are going to be many of them.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Because we're going to sue, and believe me, the amount the city spent for the taxi suit is going to be nothing to what this is. Thank you.
One of the other issues that was raised in relation to some of the services was the lack of seatbelts and safety harnesses. And that was
Oh, yeah.
something that Andy Byford said that he was going to look in at. That's what he said.
No. There are seatbelts. They're pretty inadequate. She actually was talking about in the wheelchair area, more often than not, we are not offered securement. And that's the problem. We have 4-point securement. And the problem is there are no standards, unfortunately, industry-wide for securement. I personally paid extra for hooks downs, but many people do not have it, and you basically just go back. It's sort of like being in a station wagon in the 50s.
I think Jean testified on the seatbelts on Accessoride, I think it was Jean, where it cut.
Jean Ryan, yeah.
Jean Ryan, yeah, where the way it falls is like not as, is not a secure way at all.
I mean, I'm a short person.
It was, it
you
was
know.
across the face.
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was- it sounded really horrible.
So obviously the design was not run by somebody who needed
Well,
to.
let's also talk about the Omni design wasn't run by
Yeah,
wheelchairs
I-
either.
I know.
The problem of seatbelts in cabs is not just about for inaccessible cabs. And there is a city law on the books years and years and years ago that requires taxis to have seatbelts in the back seat for if it's 2 passengers or
I've
3
seen it.
passengers. I can't tell you how many well, I don't take that many cabs because I try to take public transportation, but if I have to take a cab, I can't tell, most of the ones, maybe it's just me, that they don't have them, but they don't, and that is a law. I've spoken to various taxi heads of the TLC
Maybe the
about
same
it.
people that made your delay today 9 minutes are taking the seatbelts out
Oh,
of your
I
cabs.
think they're all directing, everything is directed at me, and that's because it's all my fault when anything terrible happens. No, but I'm being really serious because that is a definite safety hazard in cabs, and there have been many serious accidents because of that.
Like to move on if we could, Chris, quickly.
Quick, because as Ellie mentioned, Jean, because I was there as well, and the concern is there it's more proper. Then it needs to be more training with the accessory staff because on those drivers, because common sensely, why you will put a seatbelt on someone's face, which someone it's been happening and it's really not safe. And I agree with Edith as well. And there is something that's got to be done, but the way that at the public hearing, you had the person trying to speak, but you have other people behind her. Forgive me, when I say this, don't know how to shut up in that public hearing because some of the board members were like, "Huh?" So,
It was a rambunctious
yeah, exactly. But I wasn't at the board, so all I could say is thank God.
Okay, that's fine. So I got into the discussion of fare evasion earlier, and I think we haven't done a study in a long time, and I think this is a perfect place for us to do a study. Many of us have, hopefully you're all watching as you ride, seen the various forms of fare evasion, whether it's a really amazingly athletic maneuver over the turnstiles. You can no longer backcock them because the arms were extended, or it's rushing in through the slam gate. I have seen, as I said earlier, people wait for 2 or 3 trains to pass before someone uses the exit gate and they go in. I would also like to examine if there are other extenuating circumstances relating to this, such as are places where fare evasion is higher, places where the turnstiles haven't been cleaned and people's Metro cards are not working, or is there something wrong with a particular card, or is it just a crime of opportunity, or is it because everybody's doing it and what am I, stupid, why should I pay? But there are lots of different forms of this, and I am endeavoring to get a list of the stations that have thus far been surveyed. I asked Andy for it today, and he's going to try to get it to me. So we have an idea of the places that is it, system-wide? Interestingly, a reporter for Eyewitness News who was at the meeting yesterday, who knows me and talks to me frequently, N.J. Burkett, said, you know, one of the worst places is the uptown side of 66th Street on the number 1 line. Lots of people going in there, which is obviously not a poor neighborhood at all. So, you know, this is frequently a crime of opportunity and not necessarily one of poverty, but we would like to get more information on it. We would like to know if there's other extenuating circumstances. So once we get the list, we'll have a better idea of how many stations were surveyed, what times of day. I asked Judy McLean when she was giving the explanation, did you do inbound and outbound? Did you do rush hour and non-rush hour? Did you do weekday and weekend? Were stations repeatedly observed, or was this just a one-time at each of these stations? Sorry? No, they're both attended and unattended. Unattended is obviously much worse. So I will certainly keep you posted on this and hope that you would want to enlist in the observation, because that amount of fare loss,
Gotten to observation yet.
no, not yet. That amount of fare loss is really dangerous for our system. The operating budget is facing really severe challenges. They are still using pay-as-you-go capital to move money from operating to capital, even though capital will be flush with money once congestion pricing comes and the bonding ability. So we don't want to see service cuts, obviously. And if you're and if, you know, if you wanted to see service continued and stop other types of quality of life crimes, I think it behooves us to do our own evaluation. Now, you can do this without being obvious about it at all.
Before we get there, I'd rather we not get ahead of ourselves and talk about the steps we're going to do before we get there, right? We're going to first find out what's been done. We're
Okay.
going to do a literature review of some of the best practices in other places to
But
see
can I
what's
just finish
effective.
my
And
sentence?
I know, but you want people to stand outside.
No. I'm
and
just
look
going to
at them.
say, when we do this, we will not be obvious. That's obviously one of the important parts of this. Now, Lisa.
Well, we don't know what this is yet, but I'm going to have Bradley say a couple things.
Could I ask a question about this before he does,
So-
which maybe he'll answer?
No, let him answer. Let him talk, and maybe he'll answer it first.
So Sheila and I have already been looking at fare evasion for quite some time because this has been an ongoing issue. And so we've already compiled some literature reviews of looking at industry standards, best practices, to kind of see what other agencies are doing to help educate riders on how to ride correctly, and looking at it through that lens. And hopefully we will get the data to help pinpoint us to locations where this is happening. But I think once we have a more informed idea of what's being done currently here, and looking at literature reviews or literature and really doing a deep dive to see what practices are being done, so we can put forward hopefully some of those recommendations, because we don't want to put anyone in danger going to the stations and doing surveys, so we have to be really mindful of that.
And on the signs that you've seen, I'm coming to you. On the signs you've seen in the system and on trains, you know, pay your fare, that kind of thing. I spoke to Andy about this, and also to customer service about this. They could be a lot better. They could be. We've ramped up your on-time performance to 84%. Now, you want us to keep doing this? Please pay your fare. Words like that, you know, show that things are getting better. Yes, Trudy.
First, I wasn't going to speak about that, but those having any kind of signs is ridiculous, because it's not going to get people
No, it
to
isn't.
stop doing what they're going to do. They do it because they don't want to spend the money. And the fare, they say, I mean, I've had people, you know, ask me to let them in even. And I say, and they say, the fare's going up, I don't want to pay anymore. I mean, I've actually done my own surveys. But when you're in your Sheila, in your background, have you looked at fare evasion before, when there was that loud signal on the slam doors?
The alarms.
The alarms. Well, because we had many discussions about that until they were finally shut off. But maybe they were a detriment. I don't know.
Actually,
so
Trudy-
if we could,
Trudy?
can I finish my question?
I just wanted to
please?
respond to that little piece.
Why
They
don't you let me
alerted
finish?
people that the gate was open.
No, let me finish. I would like, that's your observation. I am asking in numbers.
The police's.
Before the alarm was removed at most stations, or if you can look at stations where the alarm was on and is now removed, to see the numbers on the fare evasion. I think that would help, rather than our observations about whether that did any good or anything.
Yeah, we'll look into that. We can ask
Trudy,
them
just
for that.
so you know, right now, the police are doing a pilot on them being off and on. This report helps us get more updated information on how long is that pilot going to last. But I think the other lens that I think we will look at is what is the culture change, what are the when the token booths, the presence in the stations, and what are the capabilities for transit right now in terms of how they're accounting for, how they're able to conduct this study to see where are the worst case scenarios versus where is it not so bad.
Asking for is not a new study. I am asking for a
Right.
baseline which we can use
Yes.
to know whether the alarms had any effect
Right.
and whether the numbers have gone up. So that's what I'm asking, not what transit police is going to do or anybody
Well, it's just
else.
they're doing on
I-
versus off. But
okay,
we
but
are
you
very
understand I'm
interested in
asking.
that same question, so we'll
Yes,
definitely
for
carry it
the
through.
background, baseline.
When the topic came up at an earlier meeting, I mentioned that we should be looking at the actual physical gates and structures of entry. You know, we want to be sensitive to all of the needs of people with mobility issues and
Yes.
getting in. However, in London and other large cities that have large systems, not as large as ours, but the gate structure is different so that it's really not easy to bypass the system. When I was waiting for a friend the other night at 23rd on the C&E, just waiting, and it's one of the ends of the station that doesn't have a booth.
25th.
23rd,
No, 25th Street end.
the 23rd Street entrance. On
That
the
one has
south,
a- oh.
The southbound platform does not have a booth.
Really?
The northbound platform has a booth. So
That's odd.
the story is that you talked about backcocking. Someone that's short like me was able to backcock and then just step over and then it was very brazen. Somebody else just opened the door and walked through.
Sure.
And
I've mentioned this, Andy and I have had a talk about this, and we've talked about the kind of fare entry system we should
Right.
have. And he referred to a few cities in Europe, but the air train is another good example about having glass doors that close. It's certainly opens wide enough for an accessible entry, but it closes and it closes enough that you cannot jump over anything.
And of course, we're talking about a huge capital investment, so
You
it will
are.
be a long-term kind of a thing. But I think,
Do a pilot.
you know, I think that's what we should, right, test that at some
Mhm.
of those stations that you identify as the most problematic.
Mhm. I agree
Stations.
wholehearedly with
And Stuart, we have already done some research on that, so that's definitely going to be a part of our report, however it comes about.
Sounds great.
Can I talk about the,
that. Please, since we're nearing the time when our speakers are arriving.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah, there we go. So, and as we've been talking about accessibility, you see this sign that's up here right now. I feel like Vanna White. That's what I said, you want me to stand? Today, this morning, there was the press conference at which the 20 additional stations that will receive funding through the capital program were announced. You can see the asterisk stations are, thank you. The asterisk stations are the new ones. This total, the 70 that are included in the upcoming capital plan. One of the exciting things is all of Broadway Junction would be made accessible. Jana Lieber said today that even though this is, or Andy said, even though this is 70 stations, it's something like 280 elevators and transfer points, and that this is really going to make a sea change. And Jano said, and I thought this was something to look forward to, maybe, that they're ready to start advertising the first 20-odd stations this week. And all they need is CPRB approval of the capital program so that the monies can move forward. Now that it will either happen or it won't. but December 31st is the day that the capital program is slated to move through and become, after that date, is deemed accepted from everything we understand. So if you look at some of these stations, Bert this morning was talking about his sister complaining about 59th Street Lex. It would be fully accessible on both the uptown and the downtown sides, which is, the goal is to get these done in the next 50 years, in the next 5-year plan, within the 5-year plan. So they were asked whether or not there would be, will there be pain to riders? And, the answer is like, oh, we're going to try and minimize the pain. And that's obviously the goal. We understand that wherever there's construction, there's pain. But hopefully the end goal, hopefully this will not result in the closure of any of these stations. That did not seem to be an issue mentioned. Jano has talked about doing work faster, cheaper, and more reliably. And that is, that's going to be telling in the way they're bundling these projects. So
Lisa, we have to move to it because they have
yep.
to leave.
So take a look when you have a chance. This, I think, exciting. Stuart.
Very exciting.
Just a quick,
Take a picture.
just a quick question. Have we, I see that Brooklyn has a large number of stations that'll be equipped. Have we looked at the list in a different way, looking, let's say, by line and then by division, BMT, IND, IRT? I see in Brooklyn there's a mix. But could we see the data as a board, the percentage by line, what this achieves for us?
I mean, how many stops away from?
This is going to.
Yes.
I think it's
Well,
bringing
and by borough.
I think it's going to bring the system, Alex, said up to about 40%.
Folks, we really
but-
do have to move to our
Yep,
speakers.
so
They have
we'll
a
get
time
you what we
deadline.
have. The information that we have is what you're holding, and this, and we can take a look at this. There will be more stations to be announced, but
But I'd like to see if we could sort it by line and by borough.
We will.
if it's available, we'll get it.
We, you may recall at a previous meeting, there were quite a few references to the electronic signs in stations. As a result of that discussion, I have asked folks to come and speak about the out front advertising and service info panels that are going up and are up. And we're fortunate to have Lucy Zachman and Joseph Chan, both from New York City Transit Strategy and Customer Service and Transit Advertising and Media, to discuss the implementation of all of these electronic screens, the information, the maps, the service notices, and all of that, because you folks were very interested in this topic. So please, take it away, Lucy.
Hi. Sorry, my voice is going in and out today, but happy to be here. Just to clarify, Joe is joining us shortly, I'm sure, and he is with Sarah Meyer's team. I'm actually on Jano's team with Frederica, so it's strange labeling, but nevertheless. So thanks for having me. We'll talk a little bit about the digital screen program and advertising in general today, and then Joe's going to talk at more length about how Sarah's team is working to improve the communications and experiment with different types of communications in the system as we evolve this program. Sorry. So this is a public-private partnership, as you are probably familiar with Outfront Media. They've been a really terrific partner in this process. I actually joined the...
Excuse me, could you say the name of the private partner again?
Outfront Media? Yes.
Out front.
Yeah, thank you so much. Outfront Media, yes, it's an out-of-home advertising agency. I actually started at the MTA about the time this program started, so we've evolved here together. The program has 3 goals, primarily to create a system-wide connected digital communications network. So you'll see advertising screens, you'll see communication screens, and countdown clocks and other things. Eventually, our goal is to connect all these screens so that we can manage them in the case of emergency, and in the case of a specific event at a station, we can target the screens in a certain station and be able to convey real-time important information to customers when they need it and where they need it. Transforming customer communications. Joe has arrived, and that's a big part of his job, and he'll talk more about what his team is doing to really improve and change and update how we are speaking with customers in the field. And then building a digital advertising network that pays capital expenses and generates operating revenue. So this program is self-funded. The advertising revenue pays for the customer information screens. We work together with Outfront in that Outfront puts up the money at the beginning for the hardware, and they manage the construction contractors. And it's been a really terrific model here in that we are seeing revenue being generated over and above the expectations, which is great. So our expectation is to be able to pay down the capital expenditure in a little bit quicker time than expected. So there's a lot. Outfront Media is a public company, so we can't disclose specifics about finances, but as I'm sure you're aware, we do get paid a minimum annual guarantee each year. And I believe this year we're expecting about 117 million in revenues from the program, and that's over 115 from last year. Any questions on this part? I know this is kind of the most, yes.
Just something you said about the ability to have information that's targeted at a station in real time. Who is the we that would be, who would be making that happen?
Who would be targeting the
Yeah,
the
where
communication?
in the authority
Okay.
would that
Yeah,
would that
no,
happen?
it's a very good question. So there's actually people at each of the agencies who are the communications managers. So people at Long Island Railroad and Metro North, all of their communication teams have access to publish onto the system. The vast majority of screens are obviously in transit. So Joe's team creates the graphics that go on there, and another part of the team actually publishes them to the system.
So just, I'm not going to dwell on this, but so if it's real time or an emergency or something special or different, so is there an interface with the people who run the 6-wire?
Yes. So
Okay.
you're way ahead of me. We are in the process of developing software, a software platform that will launch, fingers crossed, beginning of February. And the RCC will be the first users of the software, so that they can, if the train is delayed or if it's going off a different rail, they'll be able to,
That's what I was looking
to let us know.
at.
Yep. Okay, so.
Now, could
On this, Trudy?
on this, yes.
But revenue,
Could-
real estate
could-
sort of side of it.
Yeah, if you could give us some information about Outfront Advertising, who they are, how they were chosen, was there competitive bidding for this? Because frankly, I've been on top of this since the days of New York Subway's advertising, which goes back a long time ago, and I have never heard of them. So if you could just-
Trudy, they're a public corporation. They came out, Trudy, they're a public corporation. They came out of CBS years ago.
I'm asking if them to, because I never heard of them.
Could we get to that at the end?
Well,
So
or
does
else
she have
if
to
you could
go?
send us some information, or if you have
So
something.
they have a website you can look at. It's a public company. They're available to.
Okay, and
to
how were they
check.
chosen?
There was a massive RFP.
Yes, there was,
Yeah.
How long ago?
3 years ago.
something like
Yeah.
that, yeah.
It was actually
And
completed
one of
before I
the,
joined.
one of the qualifications was they had to provide a minimum of 25% of the panels for service-related information.
And how many bidders were there at that time? Do you have any
Oh, there were a
idea?
lot.
Can I ask a revenue side of
No,
question?
I just want to know, if you can't answer it now, if you could find out
We'll
and
get
get
that
back to me, I
information
would
to you, Judy.
appreciate it.
Yeah, there-
We'll get back to you on that.
yeah, and
As
Yes.
much information as you can get,
We
I
will.
appreciate
so
it.
all of this was done and finished before I even joined the company. So it's public record. There's board books that have all this information in it. But
Yeah, there are press releases
yeah.
related to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I ask on the revenue side of things, in terms of, because bringing in the money is fantastic, and thinking, there's an effort to bring in more, is the charge by sort of square footage, and are you going through the system identifying whether it's walls, and, World Trade Center has a massive campaign.
Yes.
And thinking, are you thinking along those scales, and does, how much space is how much you can charge?
Yes and no, right? So we have been surveying all the stations. We're more than 2/3 of the way through the transit environment in as far as surveys for design and placement of the screens. The way the ads are sold is it's evolving along with the program. So as you might imagine, there are certain neighborhoods where they can charge more. There's certain subway lines where they can charge more. You know, like Wall Street Station is probably more expensive than an outer borough station for an advertiser. Exactly. But as we evolve and data becomes richer in not only how Outfront is doing advertising sales, but in our ridership data and how we combine this, we'll be able to get even smarter. And so if you think about how ads are presented on your phone or on your computer, it's called programmatic selling. So Outfront is moving towards that sort of approach as well. But it's an evolution. It will take some time.
Right, so the potential of gaining more revenue from
Yes.
this source is hopeful.
That is absolutely our hope.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Is there any projection for the future of where these will actually be?
Of course.
Do they currently exist?
Yes.
I mean, because I certainly have never seen one of these.
Okay. So let me go through a bit
I
of
know
this
the
and you'll
Stonehenge
see
one.
that. The what?
I call it the Stonehenge.
Well, let her finish, and maybe there's some locations
There's tons of these.
Right. So these are pictures of the screens up here now. These are at Bowling Green Station today.
Okay.
So if you go down there, you'll be able to see there's, I think, about 8 of them in the Bowling Green Station. But just to wrap up with Outfront Media, they have some specific responsibilities in this process as well. They manage all of the hardware. So if a screen is busted or if it's not working, they will go in within 24 hours, switch it out, or test it or power it back on to make sure that it's up and running. They also, as I mentioned, provide the capital for the build out, and they manage design and construction within our stations. So it's been a really good process, and we are, I believe, at 4,500 screens deployed so far. So if you haven't seen one, you will see one tomorrow because they're
I've
coming
seen so many.
quickly. I mentioned that this is creating a system-wide connected ecosystem. So this is a picture of the White Plains station. Of course, it's not in transit, but the idea here is that if we know, for example, that something happens at Grand Central, that, you know, God forbid there's a fire or any sort of emergency and Grand Central is evacuated, we can let the customers at White Plains know that maybe they should wait till the next train, or maybe the trains are stopped for a reason. So even though this says departures, we can replace that content with an emergency message or, you know, snow squall coming your way. Whatever needs to be presented there, we can show.
Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Andy. How are you? So what I wanted to ask you is, where is Outfront getting the feeds from for this information? And I'll tell you why I'm asking that.
The feeds for advertising?
No, the feeds for service information.
They are getting it from, we're part of this program is to have a single platform for communications and a single source of data. We've been working with a company called Cambridge Systematics to create one API for all of transit and our railroad data. So that's where it's coming from. And if you're using a third-party app, that they're getting the data from the same place.
Because the reason I'm asking this is there are frequently times when the countdown clock that's shown on the Outfront does not match the one hanging from the ceiling. And I'll give you an example. At J Street Metrotech, on weekends, it's showing you service information, and it's saying, you know, good status, good lines showing good status, and they're showing the B, W, and Z, which don't even run on weekends, on a weekend. You know, good service would be 48 hours later for those 3 lines. So where is this feed coming from?
Well, so if it's real-time data, like this is a service alert that's being shown up here, that's being pulled from the Cambridge Systematic API. There are times, though, where we put service, planned work notices up and things of that nature. And as you can imagine, this is a fairly new process for us, right? We're only 18 months in. So we are learning, we are changing. All of our processes here about how we communicate with customers are evolving as these screens go out.
That screen is exactly the one I'm talking about. That screen should not appear on a weekend, because 3 of those trains do not run on weekends.
Okay, and this may very well be a picture from
And
a
actually,
Wednesday afternoon.
the 6 Diamond doesn't run on a weekend, or the 7 Diamond, so that's,
This is not a weekend screen.
all right, but it is showing that kind of screen. So very
Okay.
interesting.
Yeah, and believe me, we know
Cambridge,
it's
huh?
not a perfect system, and we're improving it daily. We get writers telling us where there's challenges. We have alerts within our own system that say something's not right here, and Outfront screens have alerts that say a screen's not working. So
Sure.
we're getting there. It's improving,
As long
but
as you know about that.
yeah, absolutely. It's great to get feedback. So
Yeah.
anytime, feel free to
Trudy?
reach out.
I'm sorry to be bringing up all these things, but I used to run this program when I worked here years and years ago with New York Subways Advertising. And now we are at a point where we are trying to consolidate a lot internally at the MTA and eliminate redundancies. You have just talked about two different areas where everything and information is outsourced. I don't understand why this all has to be outsourced if you are here and all of this could be done internally with and saving a lot of money and time and everything else. So if you could explain the logic behind that, I would really appreciate it.
That's a lot of questions. So I would agree that there's a lot of folks internally who are working on this, right? Sarah's team, Joe's team, the railroads, communications teams, they're all moving towards this system. And as I mentioned, we're developing a software platform that they will all begin using in the first half of next year. So that's all being brought in-house. We don't develop screens, right? We don't really develop software here. Joe and I don't. I don't know if others do, but it's not our primary thing.
Sure.
What we do is run trains and communicate with customers. So we're focusing on where we excel, and we're bringing in experts elsewhere where they excel. So it's a great partnership, and these folks have been putting these screens up in cities across the U.S. and Europe, and they do our billboards as well. So they are experts in this business. So I think it's a really beneficial partnership across the board.
So you would say that it's not a redundancy and that it's really necessary to have
Absolutely.
internal, external, and there would be no way of consolidating a lot of this.
We are, so depending on how you look at consolidation, as soon as these screens are attached to a wall, they are our property. The transit organization owns them. So we are bringing them in-house. We are also bringing in-house the software that controls them. So this rollout process of putting all the screens out is about a 6 to 7 year process. After that time, it just goes into maintenance. But we own the infrastructure. We own everything about this, except the advertisements themselves, which Outfront will always maintain control over.
The actual feedback from the public has been really well
Yes.
received on these, especially the ones with maps that show where you are and the rest of the line on a strip map.
Yes.
That's really wonderful stuff. Stuart?
I've seen them throughout the system, but will these be on outdoor subway lines?
Yes.
On platform, and the Staten Island Railway too?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Is there any thought in having these kind of signs on the station entrances so that when train service differs at different times of day or days of the week, the appropriate
Right.
sign could be on the entrance?
Um,
Like on the Nostrand Avenue line, you
Right.
know, it's got 2 and 5, but the 5's not there on certain times of the night or what have you. That could be lit up appropriately for that purpose.
In some stations, that is the case, right? The ESI stations have totems that are as you enter on the stairways.
yes.
And yes, we can put those messages there. Not all the stations have been designed in that way, but I think we're rolling out more and more as we go. We will be adding digital urban panels, which are also these very large screens that sit above the stairways. And generally, we have a strip at the bottom of them that has the status of the trains coming in that
seen that,
station.
yeah.
So we'll be doing more of those. This year, actually, in 2020, we expect to roll out about 150 of those digital urban panels across the city.
Also, is there in the contract a percentage where transit has their public awareness campaigns built in, and what percent, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, so Joe and Sarah's team controls the content. I'm helping to build out the network. We do have 20% of the time on the advertising screens, as well as there are dedicated customer informations. Generally 2 screens at each entrance to a station, and depending on the size of the platform, there's generally 2 on each side as well. This is a picture of the Union Square station. As you might remember, we were planning for some major work on the L tunnel. And Joe's team came up with this great creative, quite eye-catching, if I do say so. And we had the ability to take over all these screens to make sure that we got this message out. And it's just a really great example of how, when we need to do something, we control these screens. So Outfront is also very willing to work with us. If we take down advertising here, we might give them some of the signs or the 20% that we have somewhere else so that they can make up that revenue. And when I say they, I mean us, because we share that revenue. So as I mentioned, we have about 4,500 screens in the transit ecosystem just by itself, which is about 80% of the screens overall. We expect to roll out about 53,000 screens once we're done with this. Next year is really exciting because we start to add more of them to train cars. That will start happening in the first quarter. So we jumped ahead a little bit. I apologize for that. But this is just a breakdown of the revenue share in case this gives you a little additional background. So the baseline is what everybody needs to keep in business and to keep running. The incremental is if let's say we make $100, or the baseline is $100 and we make $110, the $10 is the incremental and it goes to pay down the CapEx. After we pay down the CapEx, then our share of the revenue is extended. We've been generating revenue, advertising revenue for many years. We wanted to fund this massive conversion while also maintaining our operating budget. As I mentioned, the MAG last year was $115 million. This year it should be $117 million. And we are paying off the CapEx at a quicker rate than we expected. Okay. So as you mentioned, Jano's theme is better, faster, smarter, and in some cases cheaper. We started to leverage some of his philosophy early on in this process. So when we first started, we did very small installation packages, meaning a couple of stations. Now we're able to package like 10, 12, 15 stations into quarterly packages, which help us move a lot quicker. And we have multiple contractors working at any one time. We are ahead of schedule, at least by a month. We've already started our 2020 installations about 2 weeks ago. So that's really great news for us because not only does it mean more screens for customers, it means more revenue for the MTA.
Is it
Yes.
Cambridge Analytics who would be changing the service alerts and updating them
It's a data feed, yes, from them.
from them?
Yes.
Do you have, would the screens be at both ends of a station if there are two entrances?
Yes. Yes. Generally, we're at each entrance.
Are you reviewing their accuracy, people at Transit, to see if
Yes.
they're adapting these in a time fashion, like once the delays have cleared, that they've cleared on that screen?
We have, and there's another group that is working on various data feeds, improving the data feeds, adding more data into what we're able to pull. There's just a lot of additions and changes and creativity going into this as we learn.
Because the whole idea of these
Yeah.
is real-time information, obviously.
Right, and this is through this process we are revealing things that we didn't really pay that much attention to in the past, right? We're working with Metro North as well, and based on their requirements, what we're seeing on the screens, we're out on the platforms testing real time, and we're like, oh, that's not working right. So then we go back, and the beauty of it by having one data source is that we don't have to go, which source is it? We know where to go, we know where to test and how to tweak that, and it's quicker and better to
So
get up there.
does Transit have observers that go out and look at these signs on stations and then compare it with the official information?
Yes and no, but more often than not, we have our station managers who report back. We have our customers who report when there's a misstep, so.
Station managers will actually look at the screens and determine
Yeah.
that there's a mistake on them, if there is one?
Yes, they have sent me photos of things. They
Okay.
have sent all kinds of messages asking questions.
They've also got their group station superintendents, station
Yeah.
supervisors, CTAs, and the traffic checkers, I think, do look out
Yes.
for this kind of thing as well. So there's plenty of eyes and ears out there. We're using a system called Slack, which is great. I use it all the time. And one of the things you can use on Slack, it's excellent. And you know what? There was some talk about getting rid of it. We vetoed it. And we have a thing called Get It Fixed. So you see any defect, that's 50,000 pairs of eyes and ears. Anyone can use it and report stuff. I do it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trudy?
Yeah, could you explain the coordination between the countdown? Before you got here this morning, I had an experience with a countdown clock, which totally threw me off. And so the coordination between the countdown clocks, which I think are all internally and run by New York City Transit, or some part of it, I don't know if it's, and the information that is on here, and how you make sure that it's the same information, because otherwise it can be kind of mind-boggling and confusing for a customer, even a customer who seems to, like me, who I think I know what's going on.
Yeah, so while we are trying to move towards one set of data, it is a process, right? This is a fairly older system. We have a lot of different clocks that have been put up at different times, and in some cases they have different sources of data. So some of the countdown clocks are hardwired to a different system, but even still, generally we only see maybe a minute or two difference for the most part.
Yeah.
If we see more of a like a 5 or 7 minute difference, then we go back and we're like, why is this happening? What's happening with the data? And we try to check that more closely. But as we merge these systems and try to become a single platform, we hope to get it exactly right.
So you will be merging the two systems at some time where,
Or sunsetting older systems as we go.
because even just at some time, a minute or two can make all the difference in the world also, when you're trying to make connections or do something like
Understood.
that.
Yep.
So your goal is to get everything coordinated?
That is our goal, yes.
And do you have any timelines set for meeting that goal?
Not definitive timelines. I think it's quite a process as we looked at our, there's a lot of systems behind all of our communications. So some of them do more than one thing. So even if we remove them from a communications purpose, they still have other purposes. It's a process we're trying to unravel right now, but we know that through this program, we'll be able to sunset a couple of software programs over the next year, save some money, and it's an evolution as we go.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Yes.
Edith and then Eric?
When we left this meeting last month, the one train street elevator was out, which I had discovered on my way down, and it wasn't listed. But as we were leaving, Chris and I are both looking at different parts of the MTA website. His said it was running, mine said it didn't. It wasn't. That I find to be a not infrequent problem. And information changes over the day, but an elevator being out doesn't magically get healed.
Right.
So
Yes.
that was both on MTA.info.
Right. No, it's a really good point, and it is on our radar. We know there are challenges there. We have spoken with Alex Elagudin at length about some of the needs that he has for the accessibility program and the changes he wants to make. And we are trying to dovetail the right technology with some of the capabilities he's looking for. So again, it's a bit of an evolution. Sometimes it's easier to make some of these improvements when you have the foundation in place. So that kind of leads me to my last bullet here, which is the software platform we are developing as we speak, and hopefully it will go live in early February next year. It is the first step towards giving us full control over all of these screens and the ability to target. So there are data sources that we are adding each week as we go through this process, and there's more and more capabilities that we'll be adding. But there's definitely on our radar for next year some plans to launch more and more features with better elevator, escalator information. And we're even looking at, how
Real
can we...
time.
Yeah, and
Yes.
how can we translate voice to text, text to voice, things of this nature. Don't hold me to any of these with a date yet, because we're trying to figure out the smartest way to do them. So,
Well,
yeah.
we really appreciate it.
I
Can we
have-
have time for a couple of questions? Or?
Sure, and just the last thing I'll mention is that next year we're rolling out train cars. This is something that it kind of falls into the bucket of never been done before. Nobody has ever retrofit train cars with screens. So looking at our fleet and figuring out how to do this has been just a huge endeavor, but Outfront has worked with our car equipment group and just been great at figuring these out.
There'll be no escape then.
No, and we have so many different car types. It's unique in each
They'll
one.
burn into your brain even when you're in the train car.
Yeah, but
Edith
it's
was
really fun.
next. Edith? Edith went. Eric.
Okay, two quick questions.
Yeah, and then Mr. X.
The earlier generation of standalone tombstones were interactive. Push a button, it tells you how to get there. When your train is coming, are any of these new screens going to be interactive in
No.
that manner?
No. And let me tell you a little bit about why that is. So the kiosks were really interesting, but they were a pilot program that never had an end date. And there were 3 different systems that were out in the wild. And we did an assessment to see how do we bring these together and manage them as part of this program. And what we came up with was that it was going to cost about $7 or $8 million to do that. And, thinking about this, technology changes very quickly. So our first priority was to get this network up and running. And you know what, in a couple years, the technology may be different, it might be cheaper, and we might want to look at those kiosks again. Some of our friends over at Port Authority and elsewhere are launching new kiosks, so I think we're going to learn from them a little bit. Our usage numbers were really low as well. I mean,
People still push, they try to push
they do.
them.
I've seen them on the map.
Yeah.
Or else
I'm
they're
one
just
of those
chasing
who
the
keep
line.
pushing. Another quick question is, you used a lot of terms today, a lot of jargon. Are you going to publish a glossary so we know what a tombstone is and what CapEx is and similar?
Yes. No.
And
Thanks.
that's that.
Capital
Mr.
expenditure.
X was next.
Andrew?
I see.
Okay.
This is regarding the clocks. The one you use for the A division must go. I prefer the one you use for the B division. It's more colorful, it's more realistic.
It's not as accurate.
The other sign is a piece of garbage. I first saw it in the summer 2010. So you should have dismissed it before this year started, before 2018 started. Okay? And also, okay, in the next decade, yes, those signs need to indicate which elevators are inactive, which aren't, because I was in Queens yesterday, Junction Avenue, which is renamed Junction Boulevard. I already discovered, I was on Uptown platform when I discovered that elevator was inactive. The elevator that serves the street level was fine. But when I was on my way home, I discovered it was inactive, no posted sign, the light was off. That light should be on if it's inactive. And then I see it's on the other level, on the mezzanine level. I've seen that too many times. And as I told Andy and Lisa, I just gave them I mentioned 207 Street IND, the elevator so the street level was inactive between 12-1 and 15. And what I forgot to mention was on 12-1, I saw a post sign saying it would be inactive till 11:30. Yet it was still inactive on 12/16, which is 3 days ago. There's something wrong with that picture. Okay, it's 12-1. I see a sign stating it'd be inactive till 11:30. 12/16 is still inactive. Okay,
Let's get you an answer, Mr. X.
yes, a straight answer.
I am not an expert on elevator and escalator data. I apologize. As I mentioned, we know that's a really big issue. And the teams that are managing the data and the communications are really looking at and improving that. And it's a really nice segue into some things Joe is going to share, because we are looking at better ways to illustrate elevator and escalator information. And we'll get the data there too.
Yeah, please.
I mean, you raised an absolute valid point, Mr. X. I mean, I've got a real thing about basics. A lot of what we've been doing in the last 2 years is trying to get better at the most basic things, and I hate what I call own goals. We had one this morning, apparently. We're still looking into it. on the 7 line where we managed to hit a couple of boxes. So I'm like, okay, where did those boxes come from? They may have been ours. So I hate own goals, and I hate I'm embarrassed by, in some cases, a lack of getting the most basic things right. But the good news is, I think that's come through loud and clear in your presentation, which was really good, by the way. We're building now the building blocks that, to be frank, should have been in place years ago. This is kind of basic, right? And you look around the system, you look around other systems, rather, you go elsewhere around the world, you look even at other industries within the States, places like airports have got pretty good real-time information. So, we are where we are. The good news is you've now got a team that is determined to sort this out. The most basic stuff, 2 clocks in the same station saying different things is ridiculous. Not knowing what the status of an elevator is ridiculous. The most basic stuff, but that's been the mantra of the last 2 years, and we're working our way through it. We'll get there.
Appreciate that. Edith had to finish a question. And
My
then
question
Stuart.
was actually very simple. My question was, is there a way of taking the redundancy off the website? Why do we have at least 2, if not more, places where we list elevators and escalators out of order? I always go to the big one that lists everyone out of order, so I feel a little better knowing who else is sharing my pain. I don't know what Chris was looking at, but
My MTA.
okay, my MTA, okay, but my concern is that there are too many places, and that's where the gremlins get in. I'm just asking a question. What's that?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm just asking a question if there were a way to streamline.
Yeah.
It gets very confusing, going back to the old year,
Yeah.
Can't we just have one?
We
Of
can,
course,
yes.
when it goes down, it goes down, but I
Yes.
would suspect if it went down, it would go down across the system.
Yeah. No, it's a very valid point, and to be honest, we are in the process of enhancing the website, removing some old pages, consolidating, so it we'll get there. There's a lot, there's a beta test, or a beta site of the website, and everything will be, that will be the website very soon, and the other pages will go away. It's just there's a lot of people who still rely or direct link into some of those old pages, so we just have to be thoughtful in how we turn them off. But we will, yes.
Stuart.
So we've been talking about special messaging or real-time messaging. So is one of the sub-goals of this initiative, let's say, to use it for the fixed messaging, so the service plan notices?
Yeah.
At some point, we could save a lot of money in printing costs and time costs and having people put up signs. So is that one of the sub-goals of this,
It absolutely
to
is.
use this
Yeah.
system and ultimately
I know.
replace the paper notices?
Yes, absolutely. And Joe is going to show you some of how that's going to take shape.
Okay. And one other quick
That's
thing.
good, Stuart, because the paper notices are frequently torn down.
Yeah.
Or fold
Right.
down.
Right.
Or
Or change,
never-
or
yeah.
change. But one other thing,
Yeah.
the scope. Is this going to be used anywhere in the bus network? Because you showed us the outdoor picture in White
Yeah.
Plains. There's some bus hubs where, I think we've talked as a board about integrating information between surface transit and underground transit, so is there any thought with this program to have this type of signage and messaging at those types of locations, bus hubs? Or critical bus
Yes.
junctions?
Yeah, I've been talking with the bus group. So we don't own some of the bus property, right? The bus stops are DOT property. In the buses, we have been talking about how to connect the messaging on buses. They get some of the same data feeds, but they have different screens. So as we evolve, we will get those screens talking to this system as well. But it's a little further out.
Thank you.
On-board screen.
Yes.
I just add to that. So definitely that's where we need to get to. So a hub, so you get a nice printout of what where the next buses are for the various routes served by that location. We absolutely should have that. And I also want us to excel at, if we know there's trouble on a subway line, tell the bus customers before they get off. Otherwise, they get off, they get that, and then they're like, damn it, I should have stayed on the bus. I could have gone somewhere else, and vice versa. You know, if you know that
Or gotten off the
topside,
bus different.
we've got a massive disruption because of, I don't know, a burst water main, we should get better at telling bus customers, on the subway, telling bus customers, potential bus customers, you might want to stay on the subway because there's trouble up topside.
Thank you, because we have to think of it as one system.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
putting in a
And
plug.
I'd add to that,
putting
even
in a
not
plug
just
for London. They
No,
do,
sure,
they
but
do
not
that,
not just
you know.
even transit. We should be telling NJT if we've got trouble, vice versa. The path, Amtrak, even. You know, like it should be a joined up system.
Microphone.
Will we ever have a system by which, I mean, I remember the old days, where when there was a parade, they would go down and mark every bus stop, bus rerouted to, and tell you
Yeah.
it was going to go from St. Nicholas to Amsterdam. Now you get out there and you have no bloody idea why there's not been a bus for 45 minutes, which is not so atypical in some of the places I travel. It's really great that we're worrying about transit customers in subway, but we're certainly not doing a damn thing for bus customers. And that's really, when we don't have an equitable equivalent service system, I think we need to go an extra yard for the bus population.
And Edith raises a great point. We have these huge glass bus shelters, which is a perfect place to put in service status information.
Agreed. And I'm glad she said that.
Everything.
The only thing I'd say to that is I'm not sure we're not doing, quotes with respect, Edith, a damn thing about buses. We are doing some. If you go on the new buses now, they are all equipped with way better information than they used to be, and that's going to be the norm going forward. But your point is still valid. Bus stops is an Achilles heel. It's a bit of a lottery. I mean, I live near a street where there are regular parades and the signs do go up. I know it's not the same across the city, so there's a way to go. No, sure. We've got a way to go on that.
Just, oh, you want to go?
I was next.
Okay, you go ahead.
Sorry, at 6th Avenue when the 4 went across, and I would watch the other buses go straight up because they were being detoured, and finally wheel all the way over to the bus starter and say, where are the buses going? And you say, oh, well, they're diverted because of parade.
It should be in the app, too.
And I get everything on app,
Yeah,
but I don't get parades necessarily.
yeah,
You get more emergency things in the apps.
yeah. Chris?
And since he's working on fixing, regarding the screens, there were some people, I know someone was going to mention, but I'm surprised he didn't. Some of your on-time clocks on the, speaking of 6th Avenue, and some other lines, I see we are taking some off from the ceiling and putting them down to the ground a bit. There are some times I think we need to adjust to give a little, not like every 2 seconds on the clock, but at least 3 minutes so they can see how many minutes that train is coming, or if a train is rerouted, because you're switching it too quickly, and a person who can almost can get they'll get dizzy, I'm gonna say, because they can't understand if that train is coming on the local, the express, or somewhere else. It needs to be it goes way too fast. It's like 1.5 seconds, and it's way too fast. I time with a time clock, but at least it needs to be notified a little more. Not so fast. Slow down, because safety matters to us.
On,
Okay, great.
as far as the reroutes going, I'm just wondering, because they seem like a tough point, and they're so important to people, and thinking, is it a staffing problem? Is it a technological problem? It's like, where does that, is it a city, and the shelters, where does, in getting at solving reroutes, because they can be so disruptive, as Edith has talked about.
So are you referring to subway or buses?
Buses on board and then in the shelters as the two, and on apps.
Yeah,
Right.
Right.
So again, I can't speak intelligently to buses just yet because we're still digging into the systems. Just the subway transit data has been challenging to get our arms around. The buses will be our next place that we look and start to unravel that ball as well. But there's over the years, there have been a lot of things plugged in and put up that we just have to think, what's the purpose of this thing? What does it feed? Can we disconnect it? Do we have a better source? And all those questions are being asked. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a point on Ellen's question. So when I asked you at the beginning about the 6-wire and the rail control center, and we've discussed this in other fora, that they're embedding bus division personnel in these sites. So doesn't it sound logically that, if there is messaging coming
Yes.
out of that site, that they would be able to talk to one another?
Sure,
to-
and it's
to-
absolutely on the roadmap.
Yeah.
We just have to do chunks, and then the next chunk, and the next chunk. So we're getting there. It just takes a little time and effort.
Joe, did you want to start your?
Sure. Thanks for everyone. Thanks everyone for having me. I'm Joe Chan. I'm Senior Director for Digital Content.
Ignore the name tags. They're reversed.
Oh, are they? Do I have a name tag? Oh my gosh. Okay. I lead the digital content team at Transit. I've been in the MTA family for 21 years now. And full disclosure, I went to grad school with Ellen here. So if I get particularly difficult questions from her, it's personal. So,
Always is with Ellen.
Thanks everyone for having me. So building on Lucy's excellent presentation and her excellent work, basically if she wasn't so awesome at what she's been doing, me and my team would have no canvas to work on. So the fact that we can create content for all the screens that she is rolling out at an unprecedented pace is really awesome for us. So what I want to do today is just kind of quickly take you inside our process, explain to you how my team works and how we look at content for these screens. And hopefully that'll give you some insight into how the bits and bytes that you see appearing on those screens get made. So just in terms of workflow, it's content creation and content distribution. So on my team, I've got designers, animators, videographers, photographers, and all of us do a little bit of writing. We also work with a larger marketing group at Strategy and Customer Experience at Transit for copywriting as well. Content distribution, the biggest canvas we work on is the growing in-system digital screen network. So we build animations for those screens that Lucy took you through. We create social media pieces for social media. We have a very active YouTube channel with lots of, to me, awesomely nerdy videos. I hope you guys are fans of this channel. Thank you. I think some of you have been in our videos actually too, so possibly. So that's a lot of fun for us. And we also run the MTA TV Employee Network, which is at Transit. It's growing to bridges and tunnels soon, and hopefully we'll collaborate more with the other MTA agencies on their employee networks. And then we do videos for MTA events as well. So I have this sign over my desk. A couple of years ago, I had to figure out what my job was, sort of, regardless of what my title was. And I'm like, what am I really doing here at the MTA? I actually came here, we went to grad school together for urban planning at NYU, and I came here to be a transportation planner. I was inspired to go to grad school from reading The Power Broker, Robert Caro's book about New York City and Robert Moses, and also playing a lot of SimCity as an undergrad. So I wanted.
By Robert Moses.
I didn't know that one person could have so much influence, and I didn't know on the cityscape, and I also specifically did not know that transportation could have such an influence. So I came here from the Wagner School at NYU, wanting to make a difference here at MTA, and I worked here as a transit planner for many years. I was also in environmental policy, and then just on the side, I wanted to teach myself filmmaking, and started doing short films that appeared at film festivals and things, there was an opportunity here to do video as part of my day job, and I started doing that as a part-time thing and became a full-time thing, and now I have a team that does it. But in terms of how I approach and how my team approaches things is that we have two basic jobs here. We tell the MTA story, and we also solve problems for the MTA and for our customers. So there's a couple kind of guiding principles I kind of work with my team in terms of like, how do we think about while we do things? And one is, above all, be useful. We are here for public service. We work for the public. Whatever we create, regardless of whatever our artistic or aesthetic sort of influences are, be useful. You know, the public's attention is very scarce, and it's to be respected. So make good, useful stuff. If you make the thing that you'd want to see if you were an MTA customer. My job as a public servant is transparency. I'm here to tell the MTA story, but I'm also I'm here to not sell you anything. I'm here to help you make your transit experience better. So we want to disclose how the system works so that you can understand why we make the decisions that we make and hopefully make your experience here better. Emotional over cerebral. So the tendency of, this is something that if you worked in private sector communications, that's a very kind of no-brainer kind of thing. It is something, though, that applies equally to public sector communications also, is that we are human beings, emotional creatures, right? We are guided by our brains, but we are kind of led by our hearts in many ways. And we try to have that impact our communications in that it's not enough for us just to throw facts at people, not enough for us to just throw data at people. We need to teach them, share our narrative with them, and make sure that they understand it in a way that is very resonant and really very relevant. So when I say emotional, it seems kind of weird. Like why would sharing information about a transit agency be emotional? But I think like anything that's good, whether it's a movie, a novel, a piece of advertising, if it comes from the heart, it'll go to the heart. And I think that's no different for us creating stuff for the MTA. So if these things seem a little fluffy, it's actually something I really believe in, and I think it's informed our work and it's made it better. So entertain and educate, make it beautiful, and respect the audience. And respect the audience is, again, be useful, be very mindful of their time, their attention, and treat that as precious. So let me talk about a little bit about the sort of the screens that are in the subways. Lucy covered a lot of these. I'll just go over them really quickly just so you know the lay of the land, the canvas that we work on. So we've got screens on the outsides of stations right now. That one is a DUP, a digital urban panel. That's on the left. That's the most common one. It runs advertising and it runs MTA messages. The newer one is the one for the Enhanced Station Initiative systems, which is just a portrait-oriented monitor. Those are called totems, and you've probably seen those as well. That one is on Central Park West, I think. Yeah. Inside is, I think, where the juicier stuff is. So you've hopefully all seen these. These are our screens that are being installed by Outfront. They come in singles and pairs and also in triples called triptychs. The CICs are for the Customer Information Center, and that's what we call the ones that are dedicated to MTA information. The advertising screens are the ones where we get 20% of the time, the rest of it being for advertisers. So that's the canvas that we work on. So getting to problem solving and storytelling, I'm most proud of this, and I'm super excited that this is starting to hit the public right now. How many people have actually seen this, the real-time strip map templates? Okay, it's great. I am super proud that I actually sketched that on this iPad about a year ago, and to see it out in the world is like super exciting. This was trying to address the idea of like, how do we communicate a very complicated system that even on a normal day, our system is one of the most complex in the world because we have a high degree of interlining where trains merge with each other and then demerge and then branch off. How do you explain that information on a good day, right? On a good day, our system is very complicated. On a day where there's a diversion, where there's planned work, it gets immensely complicated. So I was thinking to myself, this is where I put my transportation planner hat on, and I was like, well, maybe part of the problem is that instead of treating our system like a metro, right, a more typical world metro where there is not massive interlining, where basically it's one train on one line, they don't really merge with each other, and you have some certainty of where that train came from or where it's going to go, treat it more the way a railroad might treat it. So so the inspiration for this is actually within our own system, and that's like when you go to Grand Central, when you go to Penn Station, if you go to what's at the track level, right, there's a portrait screen, or there's I don't know, I'm not enough of a train buff to know what those are actually called, basically the destination signs. on the ends of the tracks that say basically this is the 1212 to Ronkonkoma, and it's going to stop at Jamaica, and it's going to stop at various places in between. So kind of taking that as a motif, as a metaphor, we basically took the next train arrival information, which used to be just one line, which is like those last 3 lines, and then expanded it. So literally, what could be, you know, more explicit than showing exactly where the train is going to go. So I thought of it as kind of a contract. It's like, this is the contract that the MTA is making with you. This train that is coming is going to go to these places. And what's really cool is that the transfer information is actually predictive and in real time also. So this, the logic behind this, and I wasn't part of the awesome team that coded this, but let's say for that train that's heading uptown, the transfers at Fulton Street really are the transfers that should be there at that time. They're active. And so there's some predictive ability there. I believe that's the case with the elevator information as well. And these things, again, are a work in progress. I think they're at about 24 stations right now. We're working out some glitches, but they will eventually, if the public loves them and we can work out all the glitches, they will be everywhere. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
A little bigger?
Yep. And these are very much out there. We are, you know, taking feedback on them. You know, tell us what works for you, what doesn't work for you. You know, they've come a long way, and they're going to keep going. So I'm very excited about this.
Strip map,
Yes.
which are wonderful,
Thank you.
has further stops listed at the bottom, you know?
Yes.
You can't, these are not touchable, so
Right.
somebody who was, for instance, in this case, heading to Morris Park,
Mhm.
would not really, if they weren't familiar, wouldn't know unless there was a map right next to this. Is there one?
So we'll get to maps in a moment. That is a super good question. And how the further stops is being shown is still something that's in flux. So if you saw this maybe 2 months ago or 3 months ago, it was actually a little bit different. And that I think will continue to evolve a little bit. It's that balance, right? How much information is too
I
much
know
and
you
how
have to
little
end it
information.
somewhere.
Yes. And this is based on user feedback as well. So we originally piloted, I think, at Cortland WTC. Got lots of feedback on it, doing customer intercepts. So that informed it, and it continues to inform. And certainly any Twitter chatter that we get on this stuff is almost immediately incorporated when it
I mean,
makes
if there was a
sense for
third
us.
screen here, you could have an entire strip map for that particular line, and that would be helpful, but you don't.
Yes,
So, yeah.
I've asked Lucy for the third screen before. Yes. And on the right-hand side is what we call the station dashboard. So that's, you know, pretty self-evident, but that's, you know, more system-wide stats and stuff. So the two together give you some context for what you know, the train you're going to get and the broader context.
Not to interrupt, but
Okay.
I saw somebody looking at one of these,
Yes.
and it was very similar to this, and they wanted the train that said 6 minutes, but they, for some reason, didn't figure out that that was the next one, and so they're looking down here, and they said, oh my gosh, we don't have a train to wherever it was in that case for 13 minutes. They didn't realize that the first one was the one with the strip on it.
Yes.
So I wonder if there
yes.
was a way that you could say, you know, next train or something as well as that. Yeah, but that was on the top, and I guess they just didn't put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. There's nothing like this.
Well, they really can't see it.
Yeah, thank you. We'll take that back and we'll keep working on it. There's kind of nothing like this out there, and so people will need to learn, but we can get better at it.
Just a
Yes.
Just a quick point, Joe,
Yes.
to piggyback on what Andrew was saying. So if you have space limitations with the panels, so if I'm not from New York City and I do need that train, I don't know right now, looking at it, that the ultimate destination is the Bronx.
Yes.
So you're only displaying the Manhattan stops. So if you can only fit in the Manhattan stops, you may just want to say Manhattan stops, but at the top, you may want to say that the ultimate destination is the Bronx. People might not know that Eastchester, the community near Dyer Avenue in the Bronx, is the ultimate destination. So
Yeah.
if this, just adding the borough may help people, you know. Yeah, but it says Uptown and the Bronx, but you don't know that.
We don't know which is up.
You don't know that. You don't know that 125th Street is not the Bronx yet if you're not from New York City. Okay, so, and you don't know that the final. You don't know that Woodlawn is in the Bronx. it could be displaying other Manhattan stops. So even if the Bronx at the top is the ultimate destination, it's not clear.
Noted.
Okay, thanks.
Noted. Yeah, and again, these are all valid points. It's again that balance, right? How much information is too much,
But there
and
may be
how
simple
little is too
fixes,
little.
that's all.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, when many, many, many moons ago, when we still called people who use the subway passengers rather than customers, and we started the passenger information centers, we put other pieces of information. We didn't have time clocks then or countdown clocks or anything like that. But we did put information just that we thought that passengers, customers would be interested in. Have you thought of, and then I have another question about something else, but have you thought about just adding little tidbits and information about the system, about the neighborhoods, and especially as you get more interested, we used to call them also the neighborhood maps, which would be the
I love those maps.
yeah, which were the, you know, at each station, what would be of interest to people while they're waiting for a train, if it's delayed or anything. Have you thought about doing that electronically?
Yes, for sure. We actually have a prototype dashboard that contains some of that information that you're talking about. Again, it's a matter of balance. Even as the digital guide, there are some things that I think digital is wonderful with for, and some things that paper is much better for. Paper is a much higher resolution medium.
People imparting information, that's
oh yeah,
always...
I'm sorry, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, but obviously the neighborhood. Okay, can I ask one more quick question? Oh.
The thing I was going to add, Trudy, was just I think that, as Joe rightly says here, the balance is getting in stuff that's useful, but not killing the beauty of this, which is its simplicity, by over-cluttering it. If you over-clutter it, then people will be like, whoa, completely phased by this massive wall of digital information. We just got to get that balance right, because I think, I love these. I think they're great, and there's definitely embellishments, but let's not over-clutter them, is my point.
Andy, I guess what I was my own home station, 77th Street on the east side, and people are always asking, how do I get to the Metropolitan Museum? I'm not talking about little things, but if there would be something that's saying Metropolitan, you don't even have to have it on the neighborhood information map, but just Metropolitan, the big places like the Metropolitan Museum of Art, 5 blocks west or whatever it is from 77th Street. Just little tidbits like that. Have you thought about that, for places of interest?
If I could just add in, so I totally get your point, and I agree it would be good. We are also thinking of the ecosystem people have. We all have one of these, and if you...
No, there are a lot of people who don't. No, you are wrong.
Big thank you to Andy for stopping in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, we think about websites and other
Happy
things.
holidays to all.
We also think about how people use websites and mobile devices and a lot of
Yeah,
different
but there
things.
are a lot of people who don't have apps, who don't have, I can't tell you how many people of my age, I do, but so many don't. And you have to take into consideration that an awful lot of those people are people who use public transportation. They won't take cabs, they don't do anything like that. So I'm just suggesting not everything, every street corner or anything like that, but just
I think Joe said they're gonna weigh what
Yes,
should
okay.
be added, what
Yeah.
embellishments.
and I'd be happy to tell you our thinking going back 25, 30 years when we started this. The other thing is, are there going to be at the entrance, again, I'll use my stop, 77th Street, and on the 77th and Lex, and on the outside information panels, or whatever you call them, having more up-to-date information, almost like a street-level countdown clock or something like that, so that people walking into the station will know that they don't have to kill themselves running down the steps because there's not going to be a train coming along for 9 minutes like I had this morning.
Yes, next train arrival information does show on some of those screens that
Not
are station entrances.
not maybe on the west side, but I don't know of any on the east side.
There are some actually some safety policy decisions that were made regarding how much of that information to put on. They actually I don't know exactly the threshold, but there actually is, I believe, some guidance from our safety department not to put the immediate next train there if it's within 2 minutes, for the simple reason we don't want people running down the stairs for the
Yeah,
the train.
but
So
they are
that's the
because
way.
they always think
Yeah.
they're going to miss the train, and they might. It
Yeah,
can work both
but-
ways.
Got to
Yeah,
move
yeah,
on, folks.
absolutely.
We have limited time here. Go ahead, Marisol.
Just a quick suggestion on the next train. Maybe it's just changing the color of the 6 minutes. Maybe making it red so that they know that's the train that's coming. It's just something
Yeah,
that's simple.
and it could blink also.
It could
There
blink,
could be
exactly.
some in one of the earlier prototypes of this, the color of the train the next train coming was white, and then it got progressively darker as you went down, so that last one would have been like a dark gray, and so there was kind of like a gradation.
progression.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So we're still playing around with it, but thank you. That's very valid.
Chris? Oh, okay.
The one, wait, you had something? Oh, I thought you.
Trudy, close your mic.
Edith, can you use your mic for the record so we can hear you?
Okay, a number of years ago, they made midday five buses, all limited. You still have people standing out on 6th Avenue. It's tourist season. They see a bus. It says an M5. And then they watch the buses all go through because it's midday. And there's no indication necessarily that that's an express stop, because after whatever time, it's just a stop. We need somehow to acknowledge that not everyone is a New Yorker, and a New Yorker connected with certain issues at times. Very similar to, are you guys going to be doing the Long Island and Metro North?
I'm not responsible for those agencies, but
Okay, but is
we
it going to
talked
fall
them.
into this purview of this entire program? The problem was on Sunday, it was running sort of, it ran express, whatever, through the Penn Station to Jamaica. And all these people get on, because they were told to get on to any train going east or west. And people were getting, watch their station go by. So I think we need to look at better information rather than just having the Ronkonkoma side.
Yeah. To Edith's point about not everyone's a New Yorker and knows the geography of New York, I think a simple fix for these would be to have the borough, like after Dyer Avenue, have Bronx in parentheses, Woodlawn, Bronx in parentheses.
Yeah.
Well,
noted.
they
That's
often, like
what I
on
was-
the old strip maps on like the 5 train where they had the different stops, it just has a line that says Bronx, so you know that you're now in the Bronx. So it would be something like that.
Yeah, I know that was your point.
Yeah, that's what Stuart said.
We have really limited time, so please go on, Joe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'll move on. We covered this already. So one of the things we did on the L train was a print and digital with a similar look, and we did what we called a station domination, which is we pushed out all the other MTA digital messages in order to very, very clearly highlight to customers, this is something you really need to pay attention to. It's something that private advertisers have been doing in our system already. Another thing I'm very excited about is to be able to use these screens to do enhanced plan work signs. So you're familiar with the paper signs now, and you're probably familiar with the sort of the literal digital translation of most of those signs, which is just to put them on the screen. What we're able to do now on these screens is to create animated maps that really go into, and as much as you can in 15 seconds, some of these more complicated geos. So this was an example of planned work assets that were out there for the West Side switch job at 96th Street later this summer, and we hope people noticed them and enjoyed them and felt that they were a better way to explain it. Thank you. Yeah, I have a really amazing team of animators there. We haven't had bad feedback. Yeah.
I put a feedback back on it.
Okay. Did you? Okay. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I put it as an ACT member. I did say it. Yes. Edith was not at that meeting, but I did say it.
Thank you.
No, I'll
Thank
explain
you.
my question after he's finished. I'll do the rest. Let me just let him finish.
Yes. So that's another way we've been able to use these screens and the dynamic nature of them. These are more on the marketing side, but this is teaching people, and I hope you've seen these. What's MTA doing to improve our ride? Oh, that's coming. Yes, laser bus. I'll show that to you. I think these are some of the nicest animations that I've ever shown in any MTA thing. I hope it makes people not just like or understand this a bit better, but maybe even like love what we're doing. I think these are very. These are system-wide. F Express isn't running anymore, and I don't believe the M1 isn't running. I'm sorry, the Asset isn't running. The actual Express is running. You should see these in the screens. Downstairs at Bowling Green, you should see these in the screens. This is just an example of some of the stuff we played this year. Yeah.
Are these going to be running system-wide, though? I mean,
So, yes, we have the ability to target things, too. So some messages we target system-wide, and some messages we'll target for certain lines.
and for a limited amount of time?
Yep, absolutely.
The bus one is on trains, on the little digital display screen on the train.
Oh, yes, yep, exactly, yeah. My animators created for different sizes, too. Yeah, a couple more. Which, I'm sorry. I might have, but it's kind of taken on a life of its own. Thank you. Yeah, it really blew up on Twitter. We rarely get that much support for an enforcement message on Twitter, but it's been fun to see the different laser bus, what it's going to destroy next. So I will say there might be a Christmas gift coming from Laser Bus, so let you know. That's right. Yes. So there's these guys. Again, special events are just fun because it's just a nice way we can make the message useful, right? Here's how you get to these things, but we can also make them very playful too. So that's fun, right? And it warmed my heart on the day of the marathon to see tourists looking at that map actually as it drew on to figure out where to go see it. That was just really lovely to see. So it's the glory of public service.
No, I was waiting to see if you
Yes.
guys were finished.
I'm sorry, I know you guys are. I hope people knew about Subway Day, which also came from my unit. So that was a lot of fun to do. And also the Pride stickers on the trains also came from my unit. So we were able to not only get Outfront to produce, we designed it, but they produced the stickers and put them on the side of the trains, which are still looking pretty good, I think. But we also did a digital campaign with it also. And we sold merchandise as well. Okay, let's talk. I think that'd be wonderful. I think that'd be wonderful.
I had a master plan about it. I was going to bring it.
Yep, absolutely.
Ellen, Mike?
Yeah, come on, Elle, I gotta hear you.
Do you get a space to let everybody know internally as you reveal new ones to let people know?
Yeah, I mean,
that
we
it's-
can,
But,
usually.
I think that
Yeah.
people would like that.
And we're on the 14th floor. Come visit sometime. So thank you very much.
Really wonderful presentation, Chris.
I waited patiently. One thing that I want to add, because Edith, I'm glad Edith and I are on the same track. Next year is our 30th annual
That
American
means there's a
Disability.
collision coming.
Can I please finish my question? Because you did say you have time, and I want to make sure I finish quickly. Edith, please. I am behaving. As I'm saying, is the 30th annual American Disability Act. And part of the committee that Edith and I are both on is accessibility. We want to do something as 30th annual. We want to make it look boom, like make it look nice, get everyone, celebrate the 30 years of accomplishment we have or something. I'm just making up right just top of my head. So I hope we can work on something in the near months.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
July it is?
Yes, July.
Is,
Just
the
July.
month. Okay.
Because, last year we did the parade, and let me say that was the most funnest parade I actually had one when I'm marching down with the rest of the family of MTA. And I say family means even TRC, PCAC. But regarding the signages that you have with the trains at the platform, there are sometimes really, I'm lucky, I can maybe see a little bit, but if a person has trouble seeing, the one thing that we have been working, like J3 Metrotech, there is an issue that if the train is coming, that should be a drop more bigger. Like, we don't want to know when the next train, every 13, 15 minutes, but they should know when the closest train is coming, that should be on the screen and following behind what the next one is. Because if, say, something goes wrong, and you guys do readjust the trains, because let's say an R train was rerouted this past Monday, and it did mention where the R was going, which it was a good way of a challenge, which I was pleased to see that. But I hope we can work on something like that, because visually it's very hard for a lot of disabilities.
Well, we've actually done a few walkthroughs for digital content on both the subway and the buses, working with Alex Elagun's team and some members of the advocacy community to get feedback on contrast levels, brightness, size of type, that kind of thing. So that's definitely informed. We're trying out a couple different things on one of the bus lines right now, and that will come to the subways as well.
So I would like to offer us as a resource, because we do represent riders all over the city, and also Long Island Railroad and Metro North have their separate councils. So to the people, to your colleagues who are working on that messaging, use us to try out messages.
Oh, absolutely.
To
Thank
provide
you.
input, as your test group.
Yep,
That's,
absolutely.
we're on
Thank you.
16. Come visit.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I thought she was going to say, I'd like to offer us as a sacrifice, but she didn't. Yeah.
And I'd also like to offer you stuff from the past that wasn't digital, that was on paper
Love to see
and
it.
whatever,
Yep.
just so you can hopefully translate some of that into digital now. So.
Yes, we're aware of the amazing design heritage that we have here, and a lot of the people on my design team are fans of the older MTA stuff, and so we actually have tried to incorporate that into the
Well,
newer thing.
okay.
Yeah,
Love
absolutely.
to share it with you.
We'd love to see it.
Okay.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Joe. And thanks to everybody. Are there any other issues before we adjourn? Have a wonderful holiday, folks.
Just
See you-
one thing, Andrew, before you go. We do need to work on, in the next month's meetings, old and new business, because we do need to make sure.
Then we have to not ask so many questions in presentation.
And we have to ask more succinct questions.
Yeah, I agree, but maybe you and I, we can, but I'm just asking because,
Maybe we can develop a protocol where if there's old business issues or new business issues that people want to bring up, you can send them to us in advance so that we can put them on the agenda, and that way we'll have a better shot at getting to them.
always done, always do.
Thank you.
Unfinished business.
Lisa, regarding old and new business, your predecessor, we asked him, and it was a resolution of the board, that he keep a tracking list, and that's what staff was asked to do. And each month, they would give out the list or have the list to get back to the members that had questions or they were expecting an answer back from staff.
Okay, I'll shoot you an email so you'll.
Yeah, but that's what. Yeah, he used to do that. So that's something maybe would make it easier for the members of the team. Okay.